Everybody, welcome back to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com and here on my YouTube channel. And in this video, this is our third and final video of the NEUMANN MT48 audio interface. This is the likes and dislikes portion of our series. If you did not see part one, where I went through the top 15 features that I like about the NEUMANN MT48, go check out that video. Link will be in the description box, as well as part two, where we actually got an opportunity to see how it sounds using our SM7B. I dialed in some EQ, some compression, walked you through the preamps, the headphone amplifier, all of that, as well as the desktop and the web app application. That's in part two. Again, the link will be in the description box. Here's part three. We're going to summarize this. What are the things I really like about this compared to other audio interfaces that I've tested in the past and things I've personally owned? What do I think needs to be improved on this? And what I overall recommend it. So before we get started, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Also, if this is your first time here, I want you to go out to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com because I want to give you a free mixing course. Yes, I do. It's right on the homepage. You can't miss it. It's my gift to you just for visiting Home Recording Made Easy. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to give you something else for free. And again, like I said in part one and part two, full disclosure, this was given to me by Sweetwater so I could bring these series of videos to you. So thank you so much, Sweetwater, for giving me the MT48 by NEUMANN. These things are hot on the market. No one seems to have them in stock these days. So if you want to get one and you want to reserve yours at Sweetwater, check the link in the description box below. Thank you so much again, Sweetwater, and thank you so much in advance for using that affiliate link. So let's talk about my likes and dislikes. This thing is an awesome unit. Spoiler alert, I'm going to just tell you up front, it's a great product. It is. If you're in the market for something like this, this is something you absolutely want to consider. And I don't say that lightly. Let's go through the things I like and dislikes. I got some notes here off on the side. So, like number one, it's well built. It's got a nice touchscreen, and the touchscreen is very, very responsive. This thing is built like a tank. It looks classy. It feels high quality. It is high quality. It's NEUMANN. What else would you expect? All aluminum, nice touchscreen. Touchscreen is super, super responsive. You've seen me do this in the other videos. You can take faders, turn them up and down. I mean, overall, the thing just works really well. It's very similar to the iPad experience. It has that same touch and responsiveness. I think it's really, really cool. It's a beautiful little high resolution touchscreen with, again, just very, very simple. You could just touch any button on here and it just works. No problem at all. Nothing to worry about as far as the responsiveness of the touchscreen. That's like number one. Like number two that I really like about this unit, and for something that is in this class, these little desktop audio interface, it is packed full of features. I mean, it's got a ton of routing capabilities, a ton of connectivity, lots of different settings and things. And we didn't walk through all of this stuff, but I mean, there's just a ton of things you can do with this. The fact that you can hook up two sets of speakers, two headphone amplifiers, you have all the DSP, EQ, compression, gate, limiting, everything all in one box. It's got a ton of features and a ton of flexibility. As a talkback mic, it's got everything you could possibly want on this. I don't know, as far as an audio interface, what else you would really want on here. I mean, it's 4 in, 8 out. I guess you can say, yeah, I'd like to have more inputs and outputs, but you can use the AS67 jack on the back, and you can connect it to other gear to expand your I/O capability. But as far as what this little thing does, it's packed full of features, more so than any other audio interface in its class that I think. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, the things that I've used, like Universal Audio Apollo, PreSonus. I've used Focusrite stuff. All those things are great. But this has just got so many more features in it. It really thought of everything. I don't know what else you would possibly want for an all-purpose desktop audio interface. So it's packed full of features. The third thing that I really like, I kind of just said in like number two, one of those points is the flexibility and the amount of connectivity and how you can hook it up to other gear, how you can route all the routing inside of the menus, the way you can route things, the fact that you have different separate mixer on every single one of the inputs. I mean, it really is a very, very flexible. Again, probably best in its class from what experiences I've had with units like this. Like number four is it has DSP, so it has EQ, compression, dynamics, gating, limiting, everything on every individual channel underneath the hood here. And you can record it or you can monitor it, or you can do both when you're working in your DAW, which is fantastic. So again, there's no need to have to put additional plugins, have additional pieces of outboard gear. All the EQ and compression, gating and limiting is all right inside the box. The EQ and the compressor are very transparent, work very well. We demonstrated that in the last video. And by the way, you're listening to the SM7B once again through this with some compression and some EQ on it. You can go watch in part 2 where I turned it on and off and you can hear the difference. But just the fact that you have everything right here, you don't need anything else. You got this small little interface, which is great. Like number 5, it's a small footprint. You know, look how tiny this thing is. And again, I did this in part 1, but I'm going to show you just so you get a feel for, well, how big is it really when you look at it on the screen here and it's all kind of cropped out and it looks good on camera. Here is an Xbox game controller for all you gamers out there. Okay, here's an Xbox game controller. Let me move it, try to move it here. So obviously it's bigger than an Xbox controller, but just look, if I just lay it on top here, and hopefully don't do the touch screen here. I mean, there you go. So it is about what? Maybe 30% larger than an Xbox, 50% larger. In other words, it's not very big. Okay, in part 1, I compared it to the Universal Audio Solo, which is something in its class. It's a tiny bit bigger than that, but it's super small, super compact. It's light. You can toss it in your gig bag. You can take it with you. No problem at all. It fits nicely even on some of the most crowded desk space. Number 6, and one of my favorite things about this, is the quality of the headphone amplifiers. The headphone amplifiers in this thing is the best headphone amplifiers I've ever heard. What does that mean? That means that you have a lot of gain on tap. You could turn these things up to their almost ear-splitting loud, and they are dead quiet. They sound fantastic. A lot of audio interfaces, once you get up about maybe 40% of the way on the volume, you start hearing all kinds of white noise, all kinds of hiss. The amplifiers are not very good. They don't sound very good. Some of, depending on the interface, may not drive certain levels of impedance headphones. This thing will drive anything, and you don't have to crank this thing very loud, and it just sounds great, and they're quiet. The best headphone amplifiers I've used in any audio interface. That's number 6. Number 7. The quality of the preamps. Now, we demonstrated this in the last video, where once again I tested this with an SM7B, and the reason why I did that, and the reason why I'm using my SM7B with no cloud lift, no inline preamp, is because most audio interfaces struggle to drive an SM7B without something like a cloud lift, because usually the preamps don't have enough gas in the tank or enough gain in them, and if they do, from a spec point of view, as soon as you start tapping into more than 50% of that gain, they get very noisy. These Neumann preamps inside of here, the MT48, are dead quiet, and I demonstrated that in the last video. Right now I have this cranked up to about 55 dB of gain. It sounds fantastic in my headphones. It's dead quiet. It sounds really, really great with no inline preamp, which means that any other microphone you put in front of this thing is going to be fine. Most large diaphragm condenser microphones, usually between 20 and 30 dB of gain on tap, will be enough to drive that to give you an appropriate recording level. I'm at 55 right now, and it sounds great. So the preamps in this thing are ultra low noise, they are high quality, and they have a ton of headroom in them, which is great. And then finally, number 8, even though it's got a ton of features in it, again, the way I like to do these videos, let me just say, number 8 is it's fairly intuitive and easy to use, meaning you don't need to really crack open the manual. Within 5 or 10 minutes of using this for the first time, without even having to break open the manual, I was able to fumble my way through this and figure out 75% of the things that you would use on a daily basis on this audio interface. It's intuitive. The way I like to do these videos, if you haven't watched any of my product gear demos in the past, when we do these 2 and 3 video series on the products, is I don't spend a month with them and then learn every nook and cranny and then come to you and give you a detailed review. There are a ton of other YouTube channels that do that, and those things are great. They're wonderful channels. You should go check them out. What I like to do, because of my limited time that I have here, is I can't spend 3 months with an interface or a month with an interface. I get it in, I plug it in, and I want to demonstrate to you as a first-time user, because I'm a first-time user, live on camera, how quickly can we get up and running? How quickly can we figure out the features and most of the features without having to break out the manual? Are there any technical problems that you're going to encounter when you get this piece of gear on your desk and in your studio? And then you get a chance to see me have a real world experience of what it's going to be like when you get it into your studio. And so having said that, I will say again, this is one of the few products I've ever really tested, and there's only been a couple other ones in the past when we talked about dog controllers where I didn't need the manual. Didn't need to look on their website, didn't need to do anything. It is pretty quick, pretty simple. I didn't need to go watch 15 YouTube videos to figure out how to use it. I mean, it can get deep. There is a lot of stuff you can do in here, and we only scratched the surface, but I got in these series of videos for you how you can get in, get a microphone and get it up and running, get a good sound very, very quickly, and get it into your DAW. It is intuitive and it's easy to use. So even though there's a lot of stuff under the hood, it's not a really steep learning curve. At least I don't feel that it is. So those are the 8 things that I really like about this thing. It is a wonderful piece of gear. Now let's talk about the things that I think can be improved, and some of the things that I think can be improved, or I wouldn't say they're strong dislikes, they're just points of information just to make you aware, and things that I kind of went, oh, I wish it wasn't like that. Number 1, I said in the beginning in the like section how I love the touchscreen. I do. But one of the dislikes about this is I feel the touchscreen is a little on the small side. When I look at the design of this thing and I see this big, beautiful jog wheel here, and I look at all the dead space that's up around here, it would have been nice to see either the jog wheel moved over to the right, these 2 buttons get moved down to the bottom, and you give us a bigger touchscreen. We could have easily added another inch on top, and we probably could have added another 2 to 3 inches wide. Now, why do I say that? Because depending on how big your fingers are, fat your fingers are, this at times it's super responsive, but because there's so much on the screen that you could inadvertently maybe, hit the wrong buttons, or you can grab a fader and maybe hit the wrong fader if you have big hands. I'm sitting, I don't know, about maybe 2 feet away. This thing is physically about 2 feet away from me, and the screen, although it's high resolution and I can see it, it is a little small. The text somewhat is a little, I wouldn't say difficult to read, but it's on that borderline. I would have loved to seen a larger touchscreen on this. I know that changes the price of the product, which we'll talk about in a minute, but when I see all this dead space aluminum, and again, I don't know what's underneath this top cover, I understand. I just think this could have been designed from a touchscreen perspective a little bit nicer, meaning bigger. The knob could have been smaller, it could have been moved over, we could have made the screen bigger. So that's one of the things I wish they would have done here. Again, it's not a showstopper. The screen is awesome. It's just a little small, in my opinion. Number 2, the one thing I didn't show you, because if I turn it off now, you won't hear my voice, is when you first turn this on and boot it up, I will say, and again, it's a computer in a box, it does take a little time to boot up. Now, how much time? I didn't put a stopwatch on it. I would say probably a solid minute or so. The first time I turned it on, when I turned it on, because it didn't show any signs of it booting up, I thought it was broken, or thought I didn't plug it in, and it took me a couple of times to realize that, wow, this thing takes a long time to boot up. Again, is that a showstopper? No. Just want to let you know, when you first if you buy one of these and you first plug it in, you turn it on and you expect it to jump up in 3 seconds, it doesn't. At least it didn't for me. So that's another thing to be aware of. Again, not sure why it takes so long to boot up. I know there's a lot of stuff in here, has to go through, but anyway, that's just another thing that you go, wow, you think they could have maybe increased the time that or reduced the time it takes to boot the thing up. Number 3. As I said, it's fairly easy and intuitive to get up and running in the basic features. However, there are lots of menus and lots of deep diving you can go in here. And some of those things may not always be clear on some of these items on how things kind of work, where you may need to break out the manual or get on their website and do a little research. I wouldn't say it's a steep learning curve, but there's just so much packed into this thing. I almost wonder, Jesus, are a little bit too many features. I mean, I know you're going, why would you want less features? But I wouldn't say it's a steep learning curve. I would just say that there's so many different layers of menus in this. I mean, every button you have, has, just in the settings alone, you go into the settings and there's just pages of settings. pages of things that you can scroll through. And again, that's great. It's got a lot of flexibility, but I guess what I would say, because it's not really a negative against the unit, I would just say if you really want to learn this thing, be patient. You're going to need to take some time and really kind of explore how you're going to need to customize it to your personal workflow. If you're just down and dirty, kind of like what we did in part 2, plug in a microphone, get a preamp, EQ compression, and get recording right away. Really nice. You want to get into all the nuts and bolts and really take full advantage of the MT48. May take a little bit longer for you to do because you may have to get in there and learn more than you would on a typical audio interface. So I don't say it's a dislike, I just want to point that out to you. Number 5, and you saw this in part 2, the web control app and the desktop control app. First of all, you don't need it to run this thing. You can run everything right from the box. You never need to open up the software, which, oh, by the way, I don't know, did I say that in the likes? That should have been in my likes too. Another like, that you don't need software to run this thing. However, you can if you want, right? We did that in part 2. But one of the things I don't like about that, as you saw in part 2, is that sometimes when you change stuff on the app, it doesn't reflect on the screen. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. If you are on the actual unit and you go from one screen to another, it doesn't change on the app. You have to manually go in and change the app. So, well, I guess what I'm trying to say, it's not a complete 100% communication between, or it doesn't mirror 100% the app to the actual unit in the touchscreen, if that makes sense. If you go back and watch part 2, you'll see what I'm saying. And I said I was going to try to investigate to see, is there a way to overcome that? And I have not found one. I did send Neumann an email, but I haven't heard back yet. But it's only been 24 hours, so it's nothing against them. So just be aware of that. Go watch part 2, you'll see what I mean. Again, is it a showstopper? No, but it would have been nice that if I go from this section here and I go from here and I pop up the EQ section on the screen, it changes on the control app. It doesn't. And if I have to change it on the app itself, then if I'm on the screen on the app and I change it to dynamics, the app will change to dynamics, but the screen on the unit won't change to the dynamic section. Does that make sense? Again, is it a showstopper? No. Does it really matter to probably 85% of you? No. I always like to see what happens on the unit I want to reflect on the screen. That's just a pet peeve of mine. That makes things a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more intuitive. It's not a showstopper, but I wanted you to be aware of that. And then the last thing, again, it's not that it's a bad product by me saying this. I don't like it, is that what you don't see on camera, but what you can see here is because it's a touchscreen, much like an iPad, it gets an enormous amount of fingerprints on the screen. And it starts to really look crummy, and I find myself constantly cleaning it off. If you have an iPad, you deal with that all the time. And a smartphone, you deal with that all the time, and you don't seem to care. But again, it's just something to be aware of. You know, if you don't mind that stuff, don't worry about it. And then the last thing I'll say, number 8, is that it's expensive, okay? It's $1,900, I believe, as I sit here and record this video, US dollars. And so I'm not going to say it's not worth it for everything that you get. I think it's a good value, but it is on the expensive side. So when you're looking at, let's say, 4 analog input audio interfaces on the market, by anybody, you can certainly get something that sounds pretty good and works for most people under $1,000. This thing is almost twice that. However, what this thing adds for all that extra money, I could see why it costs what it does. So you have to ask yourself, and then we'll now kind of summarize. Do I recommend this thing? If you have the budget and $1,900, let's call it $2,000. And if you have a $2,000 budget and you're looking to buy one small, convenient, portable desktop audio interface that has super high quality preamps, super high quality headphone amps, has a lot of connectivity and flexibility, and has all the things with the EQ compression, everything built in one, all in one solution, and you don't want to buy another interface for the next 10 years, then this is something that you can definitely look at. And I'd say it's worth the money. If you need all of these features or would like to have all of these features, you're going to pay a price for it. We are talking about Neumann. Neumann doesn't make cheap stuff. It's a lot. like when we were talking about the solid state logic UC1 and the UF8, and we were comparing like the UF8 to like other 8-channel controllers on the market, and it's twice the price. But just like with those solid state logic videos, the same kind of goes with this. It is built better, it feels better in the hand, it's a classy piece, the components are probably more high quality, and it just feels like a professional piece of equipment that I don't think you're going to have any problems with it lasting or breaking down or anything like that, because you kind of get what you pay for in some respects. Now, some of it is, are you paying for the name on the tin? Right? You're paying for the Neumann name? Sure. But you're also can be reassured that you're getting really high quality stuff. So if you are in the market at $2,000 for an all-in-one solution, I don't know that you're going to find anything better than this as I sit here today. This blows away any of the Universal Audio Apollo stuff that I've seen in desktop, and those are great interfaces. I'm sure there's others on the market. This absolutely blows away my desktop Rodecaster Pro 2 from headphone amplifiers, preamps, and such. We talked about that in part 2. So if you have that kind of budget and you said, I have $2,000 and I need a desktop interface where I can record 2 things simultaneously, or 3 or 4 things simultaneously at most, analog ins, what would I tell you to look at? I'd say look at this. I don't know that I would tell you at $2,000 to look at something else because of all the features that it has. So I do recommend it if you're in that budget. If you don't need all the DSP and you don't care about the EQ, compression, reverb, which also it has in here as we talked about in part 1, and you don't need all these features and you don't need all the flexibility, do you need something at this price point? Probably not. But I can tell you that if you're looking for a one and done, this is a wonderful piece of equipment. It really, truly is. And so that's what I want to just be straight and honest with you about it, because that's what I do here. I tell you the truth. It's not for everybody. It's not in everybody's budget. But like I said, for the same thing with the solid state logic UF8, the UF8 8-channel DAW controller is double the price, or maybe even more than double the price of, let's say, something like the PreSonus Fader Port 8. And you say, well, hey, it's an 8-channel DAW controller, 8-channel DAW controller. Am I going to pay 2.5 times the price? The solid state logic is overall build quality and everything a better product. This, if you compare it to something like Universal Audio, I feel is the same way. So anyway, that is my like and dislikes of the Neumann MT48. That's going to wrap up this 3-part video series. Again, click the links in the description box below if you didn't see part 1 and part 2. And once again, thank you to my good buddies over at Sweetwater and Neumann as well for sending me this for this series of videos, because I will tell you, these things are out of stock everywhere. Everybody wants one of these. And so the fact that I was able even to get one is remarkable. And I can't thank Sweetwater enough and Neumann enough. They made a great product here and I had a lot of fun checking it out. So now, you stuck around to the end of the video, I want to give you something else. As I said at the beginning of the video, go to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, get that free mixing course. It's my gift to you. It's a $100 course just for checking out homerecordingmadeeasy.com. And then if you want to take one of my other full-length training courses, and I have everything from EQ, compression, mixing, mastering, recording, everything from absolute beginner all the way up through advanced and everything in between, I want to give you a 25% discount coupon on any one of my paid training courses. That code is YouTube25. Put that in at checkout. It'll take 25% off. That code will be in the description box as well. And until the next video, I've been Dave with homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Thanks so much for watching me today, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video.